putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Why do you want to say the N-word so badly?
If I don't use it, what makes you think you can?
Why do you always want to touch our hair?
Who told you it was okay to touch people without their permission?
Why do you feel like having one black friend makes you a cultural expert or not a racist?
Is your only black friend comfortable with being the reason why you can't be racist?
By that logic, then I'm not racist. I have a ton of white friends.
Why do you feel comfortable cursing at your parents?
Why do you kiss your dogs on the mouth?
How come you can't pronounce black names like Quvenzhané, but can say names like Schwarzenegger, Galifianakis, and LaBeouf just fine?
Why do you feel like all lions' lives matter, but black lives don't?
Why is a lion's life in Africa more important than the lives of black people here in America? What did Simba ever do for you?
I get it. Lion King was an awesome movie. But so was Selma, and so was Malcolm X.
Why is it so hard for you to acknowledge your privilege?
How does it feel to not be the spokesperson for your entire race at any given time?
Must be nice.
Must be nice. Greetings and salutations. You are tuning into the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. Of course, I am guest hosting for the day. This is Brett Siegel, the disgruntled millennial, broadcasting to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. That was a BuzzFeed video. BuzzFeed is getting really racist. Never go full on racist, BuzzFeed. It's absolutely incredible. That video was 24 questions that black people have for white people. We went through a bunch of these earlier. I answered a bunch of these questions, but to be honest, I didn't want to answer all of them, so I let the audio ride a little bit afterwards. I mean, if you can't see the racism blaring in those questions, why is it okay? Why do you let your dogs lick your face? As if every single white person owns a dog and lets the dog lick its face. I'm a cat person. I don't like dogs. I like dogs, but from a reasonable distance, but I don't want one as a pet. Now that's what these black folks think that white people think of them. They think that white people think that black folks are just pets. Now, is it racist to think that all white people think that all black people are pets? I venture to say it's very racist. I venture to say that all white people do anything is racist, just as much as it is racist to say that all black people do blah, blah, blah. So BuzzFeed is chock full of racism. BuzzFeed hates white people. BuzzFeed, of course, buys into the whole idea of white supremacy and white guilt and that white people should feel bad about everything and, feel bad for their very existence. But one of the questions that was asked in this video is actually really, really telling, even though it seems a little bit more of one of the benign questions.
Why do you freak out when black people are cast to play white fictional characters?
What's the big deal if Idris Elba plays James Bond? I would go see it twice.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about this. What's the big deal? Why do white people freak out when Idris Elba or somebody black plays the traditionally white fictional character? Me personally, I don't freak out, but I've got I did a little research on the subject, and I wanted to know, because the first thing I thought of at that time was, well, you know what? Black folks, I mean, since we're addressing each other as a race, why don't we reverse that question? Because I personally don't see any reason to freak out if we get a black James Bond. But I want to know if the same applies in reverse. Would you be okay if a white guy were cast to play in a remake of Shaft, a traditionally black character? Like I said, personally, I don't care. It wasn't even that irritating that lefties tried to troll conservatives by casting Hamilton as a black guy, and nobody cared. I mean, some people were irritated by it, but nobody cared. But let me ask you something, black folks. What if we decided to cast Martin Luther King as a white guy? Would you have a problem with that? Would you have an issue with that? And we keep hearing on and on and on about how blacks are underrepresented in Hollywood. Blacks are underrepresented. There aren't enough blacks. Hashtag Oscars so white. Millionaires like Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith having the audacity, having the sack to come out and criticize whitey because Oscar's so white. Will Smith? Give me a break. Now, if you really want to know, first of all, I don't buy into the idea that blacks are underrepresented in Hollywood. I don't buy into the idea that minorities are underrepresented in Hollywood. if a movie is made and it requires a black character or requires a Hispanic character or it requires a woman, they cast a black, Hispanic, or a woman. But in the 1970s, there was a new genre of movie, of television, emerging. It was movies like Shaft that had mainly black casts. The music was funk and soul. They depicted black culture, urban culture. And it was an opportunity for black folks who are just rising out of the civil rights era to make their mark on Hollywood. They started out as these niche movies, but then gained steam and went mainstream. But the NAACP, the leftists of the day, the race baiting, the race baiters, the race pimps, the Jesse Jacksons of the day, the Al Sharptons of the day, they couldn't have that. Black actors and black musicians were getting way too empowered. And race pimps hate that. Race pimps hate it when minorities are empowered. Now, in an attempt to shut down these movies, the NAACP basically coined a term, Blaxploitation films. Blaxploitation. The idea that making movies about urban neighborhoods exploits blacks. The NAACP likened TV shows and movies like Shaft to racism. Even though black actors were given the opportunity in the 1970s to make their mark on Hollywood, the NAACP simply because a white man ultimately was the one who signed the check of the actor who played Shaft. Actors and musicians of the day, black actors and musicians of the day, were accused of being house Negroes, Uncle Toms, Oreos. And the NAACP effectively shut down an entire genre, a budding genre, that welcomed black actors and musicians. Hashtag Oscars so white. You want to know why Oscars is so white? Because leftists of the 1970s shut down a budding film industry that was centered around the black experience in black neighborhoods. And not only did these movies outline some of the cultural aspects of what was going on at the time in the black community, but they also gave the opportunity for a lot of black actors, a lot of black musicians to rise up and make their mark on Hollywood. But the NAACP couldn't have that. It's blaxploitation. Democrat plantation style, the NAACP stopped a post-civil rights era blacks from succeeding in Hollywood. And leftists of the day unilaterally decided that it wasn't good for the black community to be in movies. It wasn't good for the black community to have movies about urban neighborhoods. It wasn't good for the black community to have movies that appeal to the black community. That they were just feeding the white system, the white supremacist system. I mean, well, who is going to be signing their checks? It's going to be a white guy. That's just indentured servitude. It's like slavery. Those Hollywood fat cats, they just want to oppress you by putting you in their movies. Because just like the BuzzFeed questionnaire that black people have for white people, the mere fact of a white person writing and signing a check over to a black person, that's slavery. Those actors might as well be slaves to the white man. Because a white man signed their check. Now, I don't believe that there is a disparity in Hollywood, but if there were one, look in the mirror, folks. You caused this. Look in the mirror, leftists. You caused this. You did this. And it's insane. In 2017, liberal protesters are showing up in droves to make sure that Colin Kaepernick has a job. What's the difference from now in the 70s, lefties? Why in the 70s were you protesting against blaxploitation films, but now now Colin Kaepernick is, if he doesn't have a job, that's racism. If they had a job in the 70s, that's racism. Now if they don't have a job in the 2000s, that's racism too. I mean, what's the difference from the 70s? Honestly, not much. The 49ers owner, Jed York, worth $100 million, he's a white guy. He signs Cap's checks. I mean, wouldn't that mean that liberals are protesting to send Cap back to the plantation where he would be beholden to the white man who signs his checks? Moral of the story is that liberals have no one to blame but themselves. Black culture had an opportunity to thrive in the mainstream in the 1970s with, quote, Blaxploitation films, but race pimps in the 70s prevented that from happening by crying racism. Liberals, if you think that minorities are underrepresented in Hollywood, blame yourselves. This is your doing. This is Brett Siegel, the disgruntled millennial, in for Kevin Jackson. Get me at Shaq General. Kevin will be back tomorrow. Have a great night.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.